accept our agenda first, but I have to tell you what it is. So first, we're going to have a presentation by Anita Sheldon, who's amongst our other titles and things, is the clinical coordinator in child, adolescent, and family services at Mount Sinai. Also, Steve, a senior social worker, and other things. And second, we're going to have a brief update from Max on the safe haven on 83rd Street. And then fourth, we're going to discuss things we want to do moving ahead in the next few months. So that's the agenda. Will someone move to approve the agenda? Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, terrific. So, Mount Sinai has been a friend of Community Board 7 for a long time. I consider us the meat in the sandwich, okay, that's with Mount Sinai West, Mount Sinai Morningside, and Mount Sinai Maine, okay, and we are what's in between. We are the people who need services, okay,
This is true.
right? This is good.
I have a beef about why didn't they keep the old names? I mean, Mount Sinai Roosevelt and Mount Sinai St. Luke's and.
Yeah. I prefer St. Luke's as well, but they didn't ask me.
No, I always have to think about when they say west, east,
Mhm.
which one it is.
And Audrey could not be here tonight, but she and I serve on the community advisory group in Mount Sinai. So we're very fortunate to be in touch with Brad Thorne, who's the director of community affairs, and he then put us in touch with the right people. And we got the best. Does anyone? Yes. Good evening. Okay. So without further ado, the mental health issues of our youth, our adolescents, and affecting families has come to light. Unfortunately, it took a pandemic for the schools to focus on it. But very often people contact us and say, I know someone who has a child who needs, where do you get those services? Where's the agency? And although Mount Sinai has wonderful services, people don't know those specific services, and they don't know how to access them, okay? Unless they're more knowledgeable about what's going on, or they're on a community advisory board, something like that, but it shouldn't be that way. So we want to find out what the situation is and what's available, and beginning of the dialogue, and being able to provide that information on our website and to people when they call the community board or approach our committee, so that we're facilitators, okay, and also that we can learn, because as much as I think I know something, learn something new every day. Okay? Sometimes 5 things. Okay. Without further ado, Anita Sheldon, thank you for being with us and giving up your evening.
Thank you for having me. So I do have a very short kind of slideshow that I can send, and we can look at. It's mostly to look at kind of what services are available. I don't know if it makes sense to send now or later.
Well, it would be good to have it.
To have like reference during.
Right, reference during, and also then we'll have it videoed, and then when people watch the video, they'll stop it and say, oh, that's what we're looking at.
Okay, so what email should I send it to?
You can send it to mine, M Vandervliet, VANDERVLIET .cb7@gmail.com. Give it a try. Usually when I'm running the Zoom from my laptop and then I go to share screen, it crashes it, but we will see.
Okay.
Doesn't hurt to try.
Fingers crossed.
Okay. So let's introduce ourselves to the meeting. I'm Shelley Fine, I'm the co-chair, we've spoken.
Mhm.
Ben Rosenfield, proud member of the committee. I do mental defense work in Mount Sinai as one of our big clients, so it's nice to have you here and also explain more about what you do and how important your role is in the community.
Saralee, member.
Mhm.
Ken Coughlin, member of the committee, and in another lifetime, I was a mental health counselor for emotionally disturbed adolescents
Okay, so
at St. Luke's.
you know a lot then.
I'm Rachel McLaren. I'm a member of the committee.
Louisa Craddock, a member of the committee.
Okay. And
Very-
like I mentioned earlier, it's happening, right?
Mhm.
That
They have to
some
keep
of
it
our
kind of in
members
preview mode.
absent themselves reluctantly, that they were medical things and other essential things that keep them from being with us tonight. But we're glad that we have the vote and quality people with us.
Yeah, yeah, so this was put together by the Psychiatry DEI steering committee of kind of updating some of our resources, and that was, I think, who you got in touch with, who was unable to go, so I'm representing them tonight.
Okay.
But yeah, but we can go to page 2. So I'm at, as you can see, there's all of the different behavioral health sites at the different names of the different hospitals. So I'm at CAPS, that's the first one, so Child Adolescent Family Services. So there's a few that are similar to this. If we look over on the right, there's the Child and Adolescent Psychiatry Outpatient Program, sometimes called CFI. That's what used to be on the west side, now at Mount Sinai Harlem Health. So that's the newer building up at 125th. So basically, we're a child outpatient psychiatry clinic. So seeing kids ages 5 to 18, but technically really 0 to 22. We do have an early childhood program, and we can extend a little after 18, depending on what's going on. And we do individual, family, and group therapy at our clinic, in addition to medication management. So we have social workers, psychologists, and psychiatrists, and a lot of trainees as well. So lots of people learning alongside, providing the more excellent levels of care. So you'll see some of the specialized programs beneath for when there's something going on that needs a more specialized program like autism, or even something like OCD needs a specialized treatment, so that we might want to specialize outside of the more general child, adolescent, family services. A lot of these are connected with the med school, so there's an attending psychiatrist or psychologist who's running this with trainees and gives the opportunity for using insurance or lower fee kind of access to these high quality.
Just say,
Mhm.
I got excited when you said autism, because we have the middle school autism program in West Prep Academy. Down
Oh.
at 7th Street,
Mhm.
and they have the program for most of Manhattan. Okay, the part of Manhattan, and I have a feeling that they're not knowledgeable about this. And I believe there's an elementary one also at PS 75. And so we'll do outreach.
Mhm. Yeah,
Sorry for interrupting.
No,
but
please.
I got excited.
yes, at any point, feel free to interrupt. Yep, so Seaver, our autism program. So this page is really looking at some of the outpatient services. So, the closest one to at Mount Sinai Morningside, formerly St. Luke's, is actually our higher level of care. So that's closer to a day treatment program. It's called CARES, Comprehensive Adolescent Rehabilitation and Education Service, a long name, essentially for children who are struggling a bit more with their mental health than maybe really falling behind in school or unable to really function at the community level. And so that's a 5-day-a-week program, a lot of family support, a lot of group and individual therapy support. I spoke with someone, I mean, I'm biased, I work in Mount Sinai, I don't work at CARE specifically, but I talked to someone who called this the gem of the child and adolescent psychiatry world. Of like, this again is insurance-based, it covers Medicaid and, you know, some other insurances, private insurances. So like, again, access to programs that not everyone can,
And it's for what age groups?
about 14 to 18.
14.
So it's more high school.
So if they're there 5 days a week, is it after school?
Nope, it is instead of school.
Instead of school?
Yeah, so they transfer there for their period of treatment and earn credit while they're there, or even like if they are lacking credits in high school, it's a credit recovery type of program as well. So that is one of the higher levels of options, whereas most of these other ones are, you know, maybe once a week, maybe twice a week, depending on how things are going, like a parent infant center. That we also have the early childhood program. It's not listed up there, but on the east side, but that's involving a lot of family work, because if we're talking about children ages 0 to 5, there's only so much that we do with an infant, and it's all about the relationship with the parent. So the parent might be coming in.
So you said 0 to 5 twice.
Mhm.
What do you do with the less than 8-year-old? I mean, how do you know they need help? When they're less than a year, you do.
So that's a fair question. I'm not the early childhood expert that.
I could answer that.
Mhm.
I had a grandchild who, from the time he was about 6 months old, was very adept at stacking things, twirling, three cups at the same time, things that none of us could do, but no communication. I don't mean speaking, because you wouldn't expect speaking at that age, but no eye contact.
Someone like on the autistic.
And we thought it might be. And after a certain point, we realized that not to her, she didn't do it intentionally, but mother was working from home. Okay, at that time, before it was popular to work from home, it was Baltimore agency. And so she was in an area that was gated off, where he could see her all the time, but he could not approach her and could not have any interaction. So he closed off to interaction with people and started relating to things. So at about 1.5 years, I said to my son Dory, not knowing that was the issue, I said, the child was born full weight, you know, everything normal and so on, good pregnancy and everything. What's happening now is something else. If it's let go, he could become a special needs child and he could have serious problems. Do something now. So we knew someone that was associated with Mount Sinai, okay, who was a friend of ours who worked with young children. By the time he was 4 years old, he was the leader in his preschool group. But he went through almost 2.5 years of therapy with her so that she knew what to do. And then when he was ready, she got through Mount Sinai also, a speech and language program, which was free of charge, okay, for early childhood. And then he ended up not only okay, but I had to say something terrible to my son, okay, because they were very resistant. And now he's an adult and he's, thank God, doing well. I said, if you don't do something, it's doing a terrible thing to your child. It's almost criminal. Because I wanted to shock them at, because they felt that kids are like this. You know, some kids are like this, some kids are like that. But my background was in special education. So although I didn't work with very young kids, I knew the research and so on and so forth. So,
I learned something today.
so a lot can be done
Yeah,
with
so,
young kids by those who know what they're doing and how to do it.
and hopefully pediatricians are looking in that 0 to 3 range, especially when there's still a program, early intervention. I think it's
Yeah.
state, if not nationally funded.
Earlier,
So if there's a concern that there's a delay in some way, whether that's speech, whether that's interaction. I would say when a child would come out of the early intervention world and maybe to one of the parent infant center or our service, if maybe they've experienced some attachment disruption of like a major attachment figure has left the home and there appears to be a reaction in the child. Or it could just be like, there seems to be some type of behavioral, something going on that feels out of the range of normal, like we might do some parent-child work.
How much are these programs utilized? Do you have a waiting list or are you doing outreach to the community?
Great question. So we are an Article 31, like dictated by the OMH, Office of Mental Health, I believe also called Safety Net Clinic. So we have certain stipulations that we have to always be open to the community, and we're not allowed to keep a wait list, a formal one. So we have to always be taking in. So I would say our challenge is not so much needing to find people and more having enough space, especially in terms of like caseload for therapist and or doctor, balancing that. We're also connected, of course, within Mount Sinai's med school. So we serve as a training site so there's certain requirements for adult psychiatry residents to be completing, they have a child rotation where they learn about this, even if they're just staying in the adult world. And then we have the child and adolescent psychiatry fellows who are specializing in this area. And so they have a certain amounts of things we need to do as well. We also have to hold slots for our emergency room and our child and adolescent, or mostly adolescent, but inpatient psychiatry unit over at Mount Sinai Morningside. So for the higher acuity, the children who are coming from emergency room visits or the inpatient psychiatry stay. So we're getting, referrals from a lot of different places, including community, schools, doctors' offices, word of mouth, all of that, but also some of the higher levels like emergency rooms and the inpatient.
So if you can't keep a waiting list and you have to take everybody in, is it chaotic? I mean, you could have like tons. of
Sounds like an
people.
organizational nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as much in my hands, but it's about, how much can we take in? And we're also discharging at the same time of like, we don't want people in therapy who don't need it or we're not recommending it. But yeah, it's a challenge. Mhm.
we have a guest. Could you identify yourself?
Oh, hi, I am Stu Weiss. I live on 77th and Broadway, and I'm in this community board, and I wanted to get active in local community board, so this is my first meeting.
Well, glad you're here. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
It looked interesting. And I thought
Okay, if you have any questions, just welcome.
Well, there is a chronic, I'm an emergency room doc.
Okay.
So there is a chronic lack of mental health beds for children and adults in our
Correct.
state and our country.
Mhm.
How does your service help alleviate that at all? Are there inpatient beds or is it all outpatient or?
So if we go to the
Sorry, I
next
missed your
page.
presentation.
No,
It's
no.
okay, you have perfect segue.
Yeah, so Mount Sinai has one child and adolescent psychiatry inpatient unit. And there's one at Bellevue, one at NYP Westchester. And I believe, there used to be one at Metropolitan, but I think it closed in the pandemic for child and adolescent. And then So you can do like kind of a citywide search when we're looking for inpatient beds and then a statewide search. And yeah, we run out of them real quick. So I think one of the main challenges is being a step down directly from an inpatient unit of like, usually we would want a child to go to something like an intensive day treatment or a partial hospitalization program where it's a little bit of a higher level before they're coming back to once a week therapy and once a week or once a month med management at the outpatient level. So I would say we can't do much in terms of number of beds, but we are trying to, by having frequent, emergency room intake appointments available, we are trying to decrease the flow in that way of like, so that the people who need to stay in the emergency room while waiting for an inpatient bed, that's not ideal, but they can stay there versus the people who they had something happen, but they're mostly gonna be okay, safe, but they need some outpatient follow-up, then they'll get an appointment with us. And it's a higher priority slot, so they can go back, return to the community, not wait in a bed, and hopefully not have to go back.
And, one thing the community board can do,
Mhm.
and this committee in particular, we have district needs statement. And at some point, if Mount Sinai would say, we seem to have an increase in people needing these services in this level, and what the need would be, we could make it a priority and an expense budget recommendation, which then goes to the city and to our local elected officials and we advocate for it.
Mhm.
So we can be good partners, not just receive, but also give.
Great.
Do you service Mount Sinai West and Mount Sinai, whatever St. Luke's is called now?
So I am on the east side, so the Mount Sinai Hospital. Yeah, and kind of each hospital is a bit independent in how its child and adolescent psychiatry is run. It's the med school that unites it. So trainees who are going to kind of train at the different sites, but that maybe are coming back to Icon to touch base. But yeah, like I don't have much overlap with Morningside, St. Luke's,
Okay.
or the now Harlem Behavioral Health Center, or there's now Rivington downtown. And that should have some child. It's mostly adult, but that's trying to be a bit more integrated care of like people who are not ready yet to step down from a super high level, but aren't ready to go, back to the outpatient level. There's some more day treatment and partial options there.
Is there any integration, sorry, I'm asking this question. Like Orion Center or somebody that's in the community. Is there any integration between that, which is not part of Sinai, and what Sinai does?
I mean, integration in terms of,
Providing services for kids or young adults, that
Mhm.
services.
so I would say it's important for us to know other similar places, and especially if someone is not a good fit for us or they're not, utilizing the services well, we want to be able to provide referrals. So we certainly know of a lot of other places, or like we're pretty near North Side on the east side. Ryan Center is great all over. Institute for Family Health is one that's
Mhm.
all over and great. Union Settlement, we have a whole list of lots of places.
And I'm curious in your role, what's considered sort of the optimal outcome? Is it getting to people to the point where they no longer need therapy? Are there social goals that you move towards? Is it different for each patient? I mean, I guess the better way to phrase it is, what's the metric of success that you look for determining,
Mhm.
whether or not the care is going well or not?
Yeah, that's a fair question. And because, I would say we're predominantly a Medicaid clinic, but we take commercial and private insurance as well. But we don't really have insurance companies saying you need to be done by X number of sessions. Like that's not the situation. So it is much more the individualized goals of like, what is a child and a family coming in and presenting with? And so, are we going to quote unquote cure someone? I don't know, but are we gonna get them to a higher level of functioning? And it's that really collaborative treatment planning where the child and family gets to say and like, all right, like, I've done all I can, I don't want to keep coming, or I want to keep coming, even though I'm not, you know, a safety risk anymore, like my depression is much better, but I'm really lonely and I want to make more friends, so maybe we would step down from individual therapy to group therapy. But yeah, there's no kind of trajectory or outline we can point to, which can be frustrating for parents sometimes, but also that it's flexible, that we can work with people for a long time if that's what's needed. Like I have some children I've been working with for about 5 years, and that's unusual in some cases, but that can be the really nice, you know, more attachment focused, relationship focused of like, here is a stable relationship and there's a lot of things happening in your community and in your family. So if you have if there's something we're working on in therapy, then you still get to come.
Okay. Let's go back.
No, yeah, and this
It's
is
good.
fine. I'm happy to answer questions. Yeah.
Sure, that.
And so you're not Sinai,
Yes.
and that's the hospital that treats everybody, but you say that this program that you're working, it's mostly the people who are medicated. It's great. Usually it's not like that, but why is it focused on medicated?
Yeah, I would say it's not focused, it's more what the population ends up being. I would say majority, but I don't know if I don't have metrics of like, if it's like 55%. So we traditionally serve East Harlem and the Bronx. But during the pandemic, we started having people come from further, and we offer both telehealth and in person. So that can allow for some, like if you're coming from the West Side, from the Heights, from Queens, that can make it a little bit different.
I don't expect you'll have that data now, but it'd be good to know what percentage, what the numbers of children and adolescents served from Douglas houses, which has over 3,000 residents with a lot of kids, and Amsterdam houses, but we have a couple of other NYCHA developments. Those are the big ones, and one's right up here on 100, 100 and one's in lower part of the district, just north of Mount Sinai West. It would be really interesting, and then we probably could do a little investigation with the tenant association. What information do they have, you know, or don't have, and provide it and see. But it'd be good to know, you know, if they're being served, great. Okay, if they're underserved, okay, whatever that means, then maybe we can do something about it. So we'll work this out in the future, hopefully. Okay.
So also on the west side, well, Morningside, are some additional community supports. So your child can either be in a clinic or not necessarily, depending on what's going on, and have some additional home supports. So CFTSS, or Children and Family Treatment Support Services. I never say the full thing. Or family treatment and rehabilitation programs. So these are services that can meet people more where they're at. They're meeting children out in the community, a bit of respite of like taking kids out for a bit and then coming back, versus also working in the home, working with a child and a parent together. There's a lot of flexibility there. And so these are the community-based clinical services at what used to be St. Luke's, has been around for a really long time in kind of different iterations. And they're a great partner for us, for a lot of people, of like children maybe at other clinics like the Ryan Center, or what else is over here, Metropolitan Mental Health Center. Children can be in a different type of Article 31 clinic and still be getting services, these additional services as well. And then there are some school-based health clinics as well. I'm sure that some of the schools around here have partnerships with other places as well, NYP, Children's Aid still have some of the others, but Sinai as well has several school-based health clinics where they're also providing, some social workers are in satellite clinics in the school setting, so getting more direct services. I can think of some that are more up in the heights, so I think a little above this area, but
I was a principal in the South Bronx, and we had a health center in the school, but we never had social workers, psychiatrists, psychologists, and psychiatrists. It was always, physical health,
Yeah.
medical health.
Yeah.
And, so this is relatively new, I think. Yeah.
When you say the Heights, you mean Washington Heights, right?
yes, yes.
Now, wouldn't Columbia Presbyterian be the focus of very similar services for that neighborhood?
I would agree. I think people end up where they end up. People also have loyalty sometimes to certain hospital systems, depending on name recognition or where they were born, or I didn't like this doctor, but I liked this one. And just kind of the locations of Mount Sinai Morningside and the Harlem Center, like there are some overlaps, but I mean, I don't think anyone's fighting a turf war over it of like, I think there's not enough services all around and everyone's trying to cover as much as they can.
Do you coordinate with other hospitals?
Not often.
Okay.
I would say unless someone kind of knows each other, then we might be in touch. Or if we're just referring to a different hospital program, but if we don't know someone, it's just going like a community referral.
But is your caseload substantially increased because of the pandemic?
I would say there was not a huge change in caseload. It was already pretty high, but in terms of risk and acuity, that has gone up since the pandemic. And yeah, just not having enough other services or other places to, if someone needs a higher level of care than what we can provide, not having those kinds of resources. So yeah, higher levels of risk in terms of suicidality, self-harm, substance use, things like that.
In general, who recommends children, other than those that come in an emergency? Is it do the schools make recommendations?
Yeah, schools often will, if like they're seeing a child a lot of hours of the day, and if they're seeing something that might be a problem, that's one. Pediatricians' offices also, I would say if there's someone who's commonly, and then often parents themselves. If they have a concern and they know the area, they might be reaching out.
Place I worked, which sounds very similar to the program you talked about.
The cares.
Yeah. It was, they were often truant from school. And so they'd get referred that way because they just weren't showing up because of their emotional problems. Do you have, in our program, we called it a Emilio program. We actually had classes, so they would go to English first period and group therapy the second period, and then boys groups the third period or individual. Is it like that?
That it's very similar, yeah. The milieu is part of the treatment, exactly, at cares, at a day treatment.
Right, right, yeah, it was just like a little mini school.
Yeah.
And I ran, I just share that it was some of the hardest work I ever did in my life. Did it for 4 years. And I also worked with some of the smartest people. I worked with the therapists and the teachers there. So it was an amazing experience, and the kids were all over the spectrum of, depression, schizoaffective disorder, schizophrenia. We had, one of my kids had a break, you know, during, so. It's scary to think they're all now in their late forties or early fifties. There's 30 years.
Wow.
There are no longitudinal studies.
Yeah. But, well, I was gonna ask you, they asked me, part of my job to do a study, just do some research on what was available after the kids aged out
Mhm,
of this, and boy, there was not much.
mhm.
And is that still the case?
Like in terms of general outpatient adult or additional services?
Yeah, additional services, not that they would need inpatient, but just
Yeah.
somebody to
Mhm.
help them.
Yeah, I think this is something we come across as our kids turn 18 and start to age out, of like, we do the best we can with warm handoffs, and that can be really nice within Mount Sinai or other places where we can, you know, help them connect to a new mental health provider. But in terms of some of the additional supports, yeah, there's often more. I'm saying there's not enough, but there's often more available to children and adolescents than to adults.
Yeah, and I guess there's the insurance issue too, because they might not be on Medicaid once they're out of the family.
What
Yeah.
what happens if you have a child who needs help and is not on Medicaid?
New York State
Turn
is,
them away.
so we do need to take insurance, but New York State is pretty good about children can get Medicaid pretty easily. If they don't have it, it can become activated pretty easily. So it would probably be working with, we also have an agency at Sinai called REAP, it's Resource Entitlement. And the A is something program, so they're helping people who are uninsured or underinsured who come to the hospital, of like connecting to the right places.
And at Mount Sinai, Morningside is HEAL,
That's right.
okay?
That
HEAL,
must be.
HEAL.
Mhm.
I've been there bringing people there who went to the emergency room, got treated, and then were referred to the clinic, and they said, we can't help you, we don't have any insurance. They said, well, how's he gonna get insurance?
Yeah.
Well, the HEAL Center's down the block. You know,
I thought that they had to treat you.
have treated in the emergency room, but
Mhm.
we sat for 45 minutes, and then the supervisor came and said, doesn't have insurance, and I said, the emergency room made the appointment. I confirmed the appointment, and each time we said, he doesn't have insurance, and it said, and okay, got passed. It then took 7.5 months to get the Medicaid. This was he's now 75, 74-year-old who had cancer and needed treatment. So crazy me just kept signing as we went along with the hope. And then I have to shout out to Linda Rosenthal, after having gone out to Brooklyn to HRA and brought the papers after them being sent by the HEAL Center twice, blah, 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 and being told that I wasn't the patient, so they wouldn't take them. I can throw them into a Dropbox and so on. I finally ran into Linda Rosenthal, our assemblywoman, on the street, and she says, you look like you're upset. And I said, well, this would have just come to my office. She called, she had been the chair of the health committee on the assembly previously. She called the director of Medicaid. And within the month, we had 7 months retroactive and a few months ahead. And
What about those people who don't know you or
Right.
Linda Rosenthal.
Yeah, exactly. That's what bothers me.
As former counsel to the Medicaid program in the state of New York, the main issue with that and why that happens is lack of personnel to process all the applications. If you saw how few people they're already HRA to process the thousands and thousands and thousands of backlog applications. It's shocking. And it's borderline irresponsible, and there's various funding issues that lead to that. So sort of a greater conversation here in the state of New York, there's so many programs between Medicaid and CHIP and the Affordable Care Act marketplaces. That the only barriers to insurance are really the paperwork and if a kid has too many assets, if the family doesn't meet the thresholds for Medicaid and CHIP. But for a family at need, for a kid under 18, there are numerous programs available, so you have Medicaid or CHIP to get insurance that would cover this.
So if you said there were enough people to process,
Not nearly enough.
is it the city or the state or both?
Both, it's their city employees, the state provides additional funding for additional personnel. The federal government also chips in a little bit. When I was working at HRA, my salary was paid by the federal government as a supplement to the city because the city just didn't have enough personnel. But it all comes back to city funding personnel issues, which obviously is a greater structural issue.
So we got all the answers here. Okay,
Well, they're very
Not the
depressing
solution.
though, they're very depressing.
oh, yeah, and until you've seen, been in a situation that person, by the way, today had a double surgery. That's what, from 4 o'clock in the morning at Bellevue
Today,
today.
that was surprising.
That was where it was the whole day, and they were, he has the Medicaid, so it's all taken care of. $3 copay or something like that.
So because there aren't enough people to process paper, he might not have gotten that, the Rosenfield not interceded, and he might die.
That's a reality, and he ended up with like having 9 clinics he goes to from things he didn't take care of for 50 years that are now being corrected, thank God. But just think of all the people who have no advocate or some, and there's a lot of them, wrong people out there.
And there are some things related to a role that you play of like health home or children's health home is, I believe, a state funded program where it's trying to limit emergency room usage and help increase access to care. So if a child there's kind of 2 different ways to get access. For one, if a child has some type of medical diagnosis and maybe a mental health diagnosis, that's one way that they qualify for this program. So they get a case manager, or a care manager who might be a social worker or someone more at a bachelor's level, but someone who can help work with the parent, making sure they're getting to all the appointments. If insurance goes out, that person can help the parent get things back running. Or if a child qualifies for serious emotional disturbance or a complex trauma, they don't need the extra qualifying medical diagnosis as well. They can just qualify under that.
So the Mount Sinai system in the area, does it primarily serve the area or how far out?
I mean, I would say my impression is people will travel from pretty far to go to specialists and to go to their primary care if it's a once a year kind of thing. And when it's more monthly and then weekly appointments, people may start being like, oh, I can travel from wherever, or I can do this via video. And then it becomes more important of like, or I should be going to a clinic that's a little bit closer to where I live.
This booklet, by the way.
Yeah.
Is it available?
Yes, so Dr. Danberville, who put it together as a flyer as well. So we were planning to share that to distribute, yes, because we don't expect people to take down all the numbers and all
Okay,
of that.
and could we put it online?
I believe so.
You could check that.
I'll
out
double
for us,
check with her, yeah.
because then we can say, go to our website.
Yep. And what I would say in terms of what I referenced earlier about we're not allowed to keep a wait list, but what do you do if things are full? So just if you don't get an answer the first time, continue to call. I mean, you'll get an answer, but they might say, call back in a week. see if we have more availability. So just continuing to call, the squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Do you do referrals?
Pardon?
Referrals. So if you call and
Yeah.
they say, call back in a week and you have a child who's just freaking out on you,
Mhm.
do they give you perhaps the number of Columbia Presbyterian or Weill Cornell of the psychiatric unit there that deals with pediatric?
Mhm. Yeah, so our intake coordinator will often provide the NYC Well
Hmm.
resource as a resource because they are persistent from what I can tell in that I hear them calling the front desk pretty frequently to confirm, are you still taking clients? Do you still have room? All of this. So NYC Well is doing a decent job, and they are an emergency resource. They are a hotline that you can call for both for if your child is the one who's having a challenge or if yourself. So they might be encouraging you to either go to emergency room or not, but they can also connect you to resources, and they're hopefully calling all of the places in the borough, in the city, and knowing who might have availability. So that if this place does not have availability at this time, NYC Well is keeping tabs on who else might.
So if I'm a parent or a guardian or a grandparent or an uncle, and I have a child, I can't stand dealing with this child anymore. I've tried everything, used all my resources, and I'm having problems. Do we come to this same
Mhm.
clinical situation?
I mean, it's a crisis line that's available to all New York City residents.
I have very good New York City well story, quick one. We were here having training on mental health first aid, okay, for community emergency response teams in Manhattan. And we went out for lunch, and on the street, there was a woman who's very often sitting on the street, okay, against the building. And coming back from lunch, I had to get back early to set things up. And I see she's crying. She's usually asking for something, but she was crying, bawling. And I said, you look so upset. Is there any way I can help? Would you like some water? Would you like to talk? And she said, it's terrible, it's terrible. And I said, do you want to share what happened? She said, her partner died. And the parents will not allow her to attend the funeral or to be a part of what's going on. Said, I can't imagine what you feel. And it's so horrible. And she stood up and she put her head on my shoulder and she started crying and crying and crying. And from the morning session, I had the New York City well card. And I said, you know, I don't think I'm the right person to help you, but there is someone who can help you. And I understand if you call this number, that they will spend as much time with you as they need now, and if you need, and she did it. And I ran into her like 2 weeks later, and she said, the person she spoke to was wonderful. She's still in touch.
Right.
So that was, you know, that was a real New York City well
Yeah.
experience. I was able to come back to the mental health first aid. It works. It worked. You know, it looks like it works. Yeah. So some things do work.
I'm glad to hear, because I tell people to call NYC Well a lot,
But
so.
it's very often the parent or the guardian who is having a lot of difficulty, no matter what they're trying to do.
Yeah. Having a child with mental health challenges, no matter what's going on, is quite challenging in itself. So we're, as clinicians, often checking in with parents. We have some type of collateral work, whether that's parent sessions or family sessions, but we're often also encouraging parents to have their own mental health support if they are interested. And then connecting to some adult programs.
NYC Well is a program of what entity? The city,
It's the city.
City,
Yeah.
And it's just out of their what, out of their mental health? Oh,
I think they do all sorts of resources.
but where does it come from? I mean,
Which
you
project?
established it and what is it response?
Originally, I thought it was related to Thrive New York. When it originally came out.
It's run out of the New York State Office of Mental Health.
Well, you see, he's got it. Okay,
It's a state program.
or a state funded program.
It's, these things are often have mixed funding,
Yeah.
probably private donors that contribute to.
You had.
No,
Oh, that- okay. 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 Anything else that you want to share? Okay.
I also see the Q&A, are people like?
Is there any, sometimes they don't ask questions, they depend on us.
I
There's,
depend on you, Sheldon.
What's that?
I depend on you, Sheldon.
there's a note, actually, I think from your colleague that says this document is not yet available,
Ah.
but we're working on it.
Okay.
All information can be found online, and then there's a link to it, which we can share.
Okay,
Okay, excellent.
that was from Naomi,
Okay,
perfect,
very
thank
good.
you.
Very good. Okay, any other questions or comments? To share? Okay, this was terrific. There's things I certainly didn't know about and things we talked about, which are important because some people know a little more, a little less, but we had an opportunity to hear from the source. We thank you for giving up your time.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay, and we look forward to, particularly two things, getting some of the information, but also, as I said before, if there are certain things that need funding, where there's a data, base that the need is there in the community to serve, and particularly this community, then we will advocate for it. And we love to do that, because that's something we can do proactively to help make a difference and to be a good partner, not just a recipient of services. Okay,
Sounds great.
okay. We have, okay.
Okay.
Well, if you'd like to leave, you're certainly welcome. We have a short piece we're gonna do now about our safe haven on 83rd Street.
Oh, yes, sure.
Okay.
I'd love to hear.
So, Max attends these meetings. Just
Let me
a little
find my
bit.
notes.
Just a little background, about 5 years ago, this committee advocated for a safe haven. The basis for a safe haven, and we felt it was, from research and from experience, the gold standard of how to assist street homeless. Street homeless very often could be on the street getting outreach services for a year or more and not agree to go to a shelter, okay, of any type. I had an experience that motivated me to promote this, and that was, there was someone on the street at the beginning of the pandemic. His name was Raphael, you wouldn't know him. And he was sitting by this little kiosk they have where people attach their phones and, and so on. He'd sit there during the day, he'd sit in an inlet for a store that was abandoned, one of the old Starbucks that didn't exist anymore, where he slept at night. And I said hello to him once in a while, but he didn't respond. Someone said, "Oh, that's not nice." I said, "He didn't respond to me, he's in his world and what he wants to." But then I was able to distributing food, and we had a setup at PS 75, and I always took extra, and I said, I have something here if you're interested. And he asked what it was, and it was what he liked. He took it or not. Eventually developed a relationship. Over a long period of time, we tried to do things, but he didn't want to go into a shelter. And he couldn't go into the subway, okay, where it's been time before. And I mentioned to him that there's a possibility of a safe haven, because we had one on 105th Street. And he lit up. Somehow he knew that safe haven meant something good. So I said, it's very interesting. So I contacted Goddard Riverside, because they had been in a meeting And they talked about what they did, and they said, okay, here's the test case. And they introduced them and so on, and they didn't have space where they were locally, and they wanted to remain local. But they did have, in the Harlem Y, they did have space there, and they did have services there, and it wasn't that far away. So he accepted it, and he's now living in the Capitol Hall on 82nd. In the community was in permanent setting. And it wasn't unusual. A large percentage of the people who lived in the small, relatively small safe haven, like 29 out of 33 on a given year, would get permanent housing.
That's great.
And the difference with a safe haven was that if you were willing to go there, you didn't have to accept all their services. It wasn't that restricted. You could choose this or that at your own pace, in your own way. If you wanted to leave, you could leave. Okay? But people saw the value in it, and they kept some amount of their independence. It was more humane. There was a whole bunch of good things. Said, we need one, because we had all these street homeless people all up and down Broadway and Amsterdam and other places. And then the third year of it, of us are asking, the mayor wanted to fund safe havens. So because we kept asking for it, we got it. Well, that was great, except there are a number of people in the community who said, oh no, it's across from the school. Well, it wasn't exactly across from the school, it was around the corner, and there's a little play area. And the people are suffering enough on that block, and now they're gonna have to have that, and there's all kinds of fear and so on. So we made connections with the agency, and make a long story short, the schools were gonna have ongoing connection, and communication. Well, I'll just tell you what happened when it opened. When there's too many people there and too many in a room, everyone had, all the people who didn't want it had good reasons why the poor people shouldn't have to have those conditions. Okay, God in Riverside was doing the outreach, breaking
Common ground.
Breaking ground.
what's that?
Breaking
Common
ground.
ground.
Breaking ground, right?
Yeah.
Breaking ground that had a good reputation, was giving the services. And 6 months after it opened, I ran into two of the people who were on our angry expression, participation at every meeting and beyond. And they said, so when is the safe haven opening? And I said, you're joking. It's been open for 6 months. Well, why don't we know? I said, well, aren't there people hanging on the street and bothering people and disturbing the kids and going? And they said, so let's have an update on the safe haven.
Sure, very brief update. So we had the 1 year look back meeting. It was just towards the end of this past August. And they reported that they're at full capacity, and they've been now for at least 6 months, which means they have 76 beds occupied. And then with regard to placements, they have 33 placements into supportive housing so far, and 15 additional active packets for placements. And they're just waiting for the placements to finalize. Let's see. Notes. They're working with the Open Hearts Initiative to help residents with resume workshopping, interview skills, and creative writing outlets. And that's a citywide initiative that has a big presence here in our district as well. And they're reporting that many of the residents are getting, part-time work and other opportunities, and they're earning and kind of earning their own living. And that's all indicative of helping them transition to the next phase of their housing journey. And let's see, the last thing I have here is they were opening the building in 2 phases. 106 opened first. That was the one with 76 beds occupied. And now number 108 is due to come online December, January, something like that. And that's going to be smaller. It's going to be 32 additional beds. And as I said, open by January 2025, maybe a little bit earlier. And that's the extent of it. I can say there was, they have a diversity of stakeholders come to these meetings, and there really wasn't anyone with that many complaints. There were a couple people that were still so concerned about the quote druggies out there, and that comment was shut down pretty quickly, which I thought was good. But otherwise, our offices only heard one complaint the entire time. And I think that's a pretty good indicator as well. That there was a bike chained to a street post, to a lamp post, or like a street sign out front. So it wasn't anything like people were suggesting.
It's always bikes.
Right, it is. So I would say that was pretty successful.
In the
And
city, I don't think it's possible to not have a complaint.
Well, there was a complaint in the building I live in, so I think we're just as good.
Well, I went to the post office just saying, I was trying to figure out which buildings they were.
good, that sounds
Yeah,
like it's integrating
I
well.
can't figure it out.
That's probably a good thing, as Max is sort of highlighting, that they sort of blend in with the community and they don't indescribably stand out, and they're obvious in feature. I think that's probably the goal.
Yeah,
Yeah, the 105th Street one is still operating and no one knows where it is. And while we're having all these discussions, people, where is it? I said, I'm not gonna tell you, because if you haven't seen it or felt it, then why, if I tell you, go there and you'll find something, And they said, you gotta tell us. I said, I don't have to do anything. We're volunteers.
Max, how many safe havens do we have in the district? Is it just 2 or do we have more?
I think we have more than 2. I'm not sure, but I can find out.
And are we trying to get more with
Only
that?
2?
There are 2. That one, people think that was the first one, okay? The other one, I'm not telling you where it is. It's still going, but you never know it. You never know the building, because I go by there, it's in northern part of the district, and I see people coming in and out, and I said, it doesn't seem like very unusual. People all over the west side are like this, it's not anything particular. You can see, in the way a person looks or a person acts or so on, and they're getting the help they need, and the statistics are good. If we tried asking for another safe haven, I think we'd have a packed house.
It's more than our share.
Right, everybody said, people say we have too much, or some people say too much shelter. They don't even know what the buildings are. Many of our buildings are supportive housing or special housing, we have shelters. We don't have that many shelters, but why do we have more than the east side, for instance? Because we still had SROs on the west side, and SROs are what is used for shelters. So most of our SROs were torn down, restructured and so on, but we still have them.
We still have, there's at least one hotel in my neighborhood, that's being used for, migrants.
Right.
And it's perfectly fine. And you walk down that street, you would not know. There is a police guard at the corner. And I've talked to the person and she said, we're here. Nothing's happening.
Mhm.
And so I didn't even know that it was an active, hotel for migrants. It's pretty nice.
There's another one, people from a very luxurious building said, we feel terrible across the street. We have, and this is before the migrants, we have a shelter. I said, well, what goes on there? Well, they're there. And I said, I walked by there so many times, what are they doing? Well, sometimes they're on the street. I said, I saw some people from this building on the street too, but on the other side. Are they smoking? No. Are they this? I said, well, if you find any problems, you can call the agency that is administering the services, and they will address it. Okay, we've had that all along. And they say, yeah, but they're there. That's the problem. The Westside Federation for Senior and Supportive Housing has a building on 85th between West End and Riverside. That building was the Brandon, and it was a women's residence. That over the years, there were like 7 women there, and the agency, I think it was Volunteers America, wanted to sell it on the open market. And I called Gail Brewer when she was borough president, and I said, do you know what's going on? She said, what can you do? I said, you call them in and you tell them you're not gonna support anything they do. And, you know, that it was meant for, special housing and it should remain that, and you'll get a good price for whatever you're doing. So she did, and she got it, she did exactly that, and, you know, they believe that she's going to do what she said. And, so she gave us the building. And so we moved our Valley Lodge shelter while it was being rebuilt on 108th Street, there. And you figure the neighbors would object. First they wanted to know who's coming and what's coming, told them. And then they said, how can we help? And then one day we got a serious call about 2 of the people and what was going on. They walked down the street, they're sure they're from there, and they sat in the park and they were smoking in the park. Okay, that was bad enough. What was important, it was the beginning of the pandemic and they were sitting too close together. And they were concerned about COVID. Okay, they were concerned about these people, one, the smoking, but that could be, you know, taken care of easily. But that the people might not be, you know, what they're doing is not healthy, being sitting close together. And that was the only complaint. And now that the Valley Lodge is back up on 108th Street, that building's gonna become at least 85 units of senior housing, okay? In that building, okay? Low income senior housing and a certain percentage of people who are formerly homeless and seniors. So we have things going on where we have neighbors who, once they get to know what's going on and they're spoken to in advance, as we saw on 106th Street, when you don't, the city does not tell people what's going on and something happens, but when the city's transparent and explains what they're trying to do and has input from the community, things go much smoother. And our community's been very welcoming. The last thing I want to say is one of the people who was up in Valley Lodge ended up, I won't say who, a commissioner in New York City. Person was homeless,
Oh, really?
was in Valley Lodge, was a graduate in permanent housing, and became a commissioner eventually, one of the commissioners in New York City government. Okay, so those are the special stories, but it can be even that good.
That's great.
So, a quick brainstorming. Any topic that is pressing, I'd come up with 10. Anything you would like to, and you don't have to do it now, you can send it to me, that you would like us to focus on at these meetings. I'll tell you one that I have in mind. I think that autism is very misunderstood. That there are people on the spectrum. I'm on a Zoom call with someone every morning, and I know that I don't want to diagnose people, but I've learned how to get, you know, how to deal with some of the things. Because he's a great person, but how do you relate, you know, and what are the issues, and how are these people different, and how is each one different from the other? It's not just one characteristic. This is characteristic, and this is what the people are about. No,
Well, that's why they call it a spectrum.
Exactly. So I think educating people about it, okay, and involving the 2 programs in our community for children, so that we can find out what's going on there.
It's a great.
And they're regular public schools. They're not in special schools. but also the adults, okay? It could be one of us, okay? Well, good, right, to some degree, right, someplace. No, but really, I think that's something I'm interested in pursuing. But let's do this, if there's something you want to focus on, or we can do that, but do it within the next week or so, because there's planning that goes into, you know, to what you want. Narrowing down, yes,
Not sure it comes under this, but I have been involved for the past year in a group of people who's been trying to develop drop-off centers for people with dementia. This is not just Alzheimer's, there are many different forms of dementia. As you know, almost 25% of the Upper West Side is over 65. This is a continuing problem, and it's very difficult on usually the family who takes care of these people. I almost got a grant from Linda Rosenfield, but it got mixed up with the fact that we needed a 501c3. And the JCC was gonna do it, but they wanted a different kind of program than what we wanted. I don't know if this is a project we've talked to Gail. You know, everyone's interested, there might be money, there might not, what we need first is location. And a funding source.
I'm on the New York City Age Friendly Commission, and one of the commissioners is the head of, or the representative from the Alzheimer's Foundation. So maybe we can bring him forward, maybe, I'm sure they know where funding comes from, and they may want to be.
Funding is the city and the state, it's the Department of Aging. There is actually considerable funding from the city and state. There are a lot of regulations. You know, 1 to 5 staffing. But I think this is a very necessary thing and growing necessity on the Upper West Side.
One of our dearest friends, we found out this week, who we saw wasn't, you know, something was wrong. And her son called us and saying, you know what's happening with my mother. And we kind of knew, they don't live in the immediate neighborhood, and they're struggling. And I said, I gave you the number, family support services, okay? Extremely important for her husband and for her children, and how they can be supportive and how they can deal with what they're going through. But I think, let's talk, okay, about what we can do and the project.
Right, I'm
you're
not
looking
sure
for.
how to fold it into the committee,
We will do it.
but
You
it,
know, we will advocate.
but it's
We can
really
become
necessary,
advocates.
and it's like reaching out to the people who can move things, and,
Mhm.
you know, hopefully we can get Linda on board again. And, I also spoke to Kay because it isn't necessarily, I'm learning so much.
Kay is Kay Carpenter. Is on the
Yes.
board. Okay.
It isn't that much that a place to be, but you need an agency that you can fund the money through.
Hmm.
You know about this, for sure.
We also have the West Side Federation for Seniors for that.
Okay.
Which I'm president, and we could present it to our board. Let's work on it, but we
Okay.
can make it a project of the committee. Okay, and advocacy from the committee if people are willing. And because I like when we can do something that active and that has some life that that we build from it, a project, something that's actionable, we can
Yes.
make that.
I've been talking, there were actually more of these kind of centers than you would think. Just not in Community Board 7, but, Penn South. In Bayside, they have a wonderful one.
Mhm.
You know,
Do we have any things that they call NORCs in this community?
Oh, yes, we
That's
do.
Penn South, they,
333 West 66th Street is in Newark.
that's a naturally,
naturally occurring
Retirement
retirement.
community.
and they have all kinds of services, or they will
These are,
accept or ask for services.
these are programs, this is different from a regular senior center.
We're all gonna leave.
All right, fair enough. I didn't-
Okay, give 1 minute.
I'll wait a couple minutes.
Okay.
Okay, but it's different from a regular senior center.
Yeah.
The needs are very, very different, the staffing is very different. It would be, it's not just, it's a drop-off center, it's basically to give the family caregivers
A break.
a break.
Mhm.
Because it's 24/7 and it's both physically debilitating and it's emotionally exhausting.
Mhm.
Respite service. Sounds like respite services.
Mhm. Okay, so now we have something to stimulate us. If anyone else has anything that they say, I would love to have the committee get into this. This is something that I'm passionate about. I'm worried about, I'm concerned about.